Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40k Fireside podcast. I'm David Gaylard, and I'm joined by my good friend Vijay. Together, we discuss 40k and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the Fireside and listen.
And welcome back, everyone, to episode 23 of 40k Fireside. It's good to be back. I missed the last episode, but I'm back in action now. Me and Dave are going to go through a few interesting things. So we're going to focus this episode down onto Birmingham Team Tournament, which is the largest team event that's happened in the UK. This event was a singles event, but it's now been switched over to a teams event. I thought, okay, maybe it'll be less popular, but it is crazy popular. The tickets are fully sold out. Is it 300 players, Dave?
I think it's over 300. I just refreshed the page. 63
Yeah.
teams, so 315 players. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big team event, guys. And this is teams of 5 players here. And it's played through the kind of similar UKTC mission format. And I think it's going to be a really, really interesting event. We've got a pretty balanced meta, and teams tends to just even out any bumps in the meta. And I think in this situation, it's going to create for a very exciting set of games throughout this tournament. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, so if you weren't aware, the team tournament is structured the same mission format that the UKTC plays, and it's a 5v5 teams. And in addition to that, there is no table swap or mission swap or terrain pack swap. Every single table plays on the same terrain. So it's a little bit reductionist from the kind of WTC standard, perhaps, where you can adjust the terrain. But it means that you can really hone in on the way that your factions work together and really hone in on how your team's factions might play the tournament structure and how what maybe the latter rounds for the missions that you might want to be more ticked towards against. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's really cool. Fives is really cool. I think it's a really nice way to have the team. I think we're actually at the point in the UK where we could do 8s. That would be even cooler as well, because we have 315 people here. I'm sure we could get 8 people. If these people could get 8 people together. There are some teams with 3 teams. There, I think Tryhard Wargaming from the Discord server, Tryhard Wargaming Discord, they have 3 teams, 15 players going, which is awesome to see. So I'm really chumped to see them, and I know they'll be out there in their wargaming apparel as well.
Yeah, I do think that the interesting thing about 5s with set terrain on every single board is that it really matches well with how singles plays.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's very accessible for people, and they can kind of create their lists and interpret the results of these events in much more of a singles-minded way, which is still where the UK is mostly at. So I think this is the perfect gateway to kind of, team events, and it makes sense why it's so popular.
Yeah, for sure. But we've had it for over 2 years, I want to say now. I think when was the first one I played was with Dice Down. So I think
the international team tournament, one.
So I think maybe we could get room for the 8s, but I guess from a business standpoint, the same amount of people would probably come, more 5s or 8s. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But I did want to touch on one thing you said. The meta has kind of flattened out, and in teams it really flattens out a lot more, particularly now, I think, because Space Marines being kind of dominant in kind of a lot of different flavors are all rolled into one codex now. So you can only have one Space Marine player. So I think that's allowed a lot of breathing room for other codexes to come through.
Yeah, and I don't think necessarily there is one like optimal. You can't just say these 5 factions are way better than everything else in this combination. So there's a lot of room for people to experiment across their lists, even with the top factions. We could say like Eldar and Guard are really, really strong, but many teams don't have either of those, and the team still looks strong.
Yeah, exactly. Should we perhaps, it's a good thing point to go off on, should we go through, because I'm going to disagree with exactly what you just said, of course. Should we go through and look at what we think the top kind of, I guess, should we limit it to 8 maybe is a good way of doing it?
The 8 best teams?
Yeah, no, the 8 best factions, I think, going into it.
8 best factions. Oh, okay, yes. This is introduction. My goodness.
This is a tough one, though, guys, because there's so much debatability, and not only are you going to evaluate the factions in terms of their singles performance, but you can't have your team faction kind of breakdown be too similar across the board, I think, right? You want to have some armies that are perhaps more melee orientated and good against something else, and then some armies that are, maybe have 2 armies that are good against one army, so you can have what's called a pin. So you can't just go, these are the 5 best singles lists, because there might be a clear weakness amongst all of those lists to one style of list. Did that come out all right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense.
Okay, so I think the best 2 are, and just for preface, we've done quite a bit of testing in our team, pairing practice, and we've reached out for information with Team Ignite. I think the best 2 are Iron Hands and Eldari. That would be my top 2.
Yeah, for singles
No,
play.
for teams, I think, in terms of if you were to construct the best kind of teams list, I think undoubtedly there's not really much debate whether you take Iron Hands and Eldari for your 2 of your factions within the 5 that you're taking here, right?
Yeah, you see, for me, I'm not as cut and dry. Me and Dave have a lot of discussions about this because sometimes what can happen is when you kind of practice in and around people, your views get distorted a little bit. Like I play against you and Nas as my practice people, and I talk to you guys a lot. And sometimes when my opinions I have about God, if I compare it to how, say, the Europeans are talking about God, there's just vast differences in how much we rate the power level of the faction based on who we talk to. And I saw that very much in your kind of Warhammer Fest game, your finals against Innes, and he was playing Iron Hands. Iron Hands widely kind of people have decided is very, very good faction, very strong. And Guard, people have decided, they're kind of up and down a little bit about it. And all the discussion I had during that when you were playing the game was everyone was saying, oh, Innes is just going to absolutely crush Dave. Like there's not even a game here.
Yeah.
And actually, when like you break it down, like if you were playing it smart, this is what Dave can do to make this a really close game. And you did exactly what I was kind of typing out. And people were like, hold on a second. I think it was Typhus from Team Poland who was just like, I've never seen someone play Guard like this.
Yeah.
And that may be a thing. You may have never seen someone play Eldari like how Liam VSL plays it.
Yeah.
And that's going to influence, I think, our kind of opinions here a little bit.
Okay, but I 100% agree. And I think a lot of the viewers also have that kind of your local games. If you're kind of a player that plays at your local game store, right, and maybe the best 2 players at your local game store only play this faction, then you kind of think, oh, this is the best thing, blah, 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 and how do I take to beat that? And then you go to maybe a larger tournament and you don't even play those guys, or they're not even there, and then all of a sudden you're in a much bigger pond, which is can be a bit more representative, so to speak. So definitely agree with that. And that's always, I think, no matter if you're playing at the local game store, if you're playing in a very tight-knit team like ours, the impact, it can be an echo chamber to some degree, can't it?
Yeah. And the Eldar question is an interesting one. And I think this exercise of preparing for a teams tournament, where very much you consider your faction against all the other factions in the game, and you try and determine how well you do into each one, because the scoring is a little bit different. It's not just win-loss. It's actually how much you win or how much you lose games by. And the interesting thing when I was doing this exercise was Eldar have a lot of games which sit around the draw mark. So while they may be excellent for singles because they have a very small number of bad matchups, like there's very few games they just outright lose. There are very few games, possibly, that, or a smaller amount of games compared to other factions that they really win. And so like when we do a little scoring of how well I do into different team compositions, my score comes out a little bit lower than at least 3 out of our 5 team members, despite me playing Eldari.
Yeah, for sure.
So it does make a difference if you're talking about a singles perspective or a team's perspective in these factions.
Yeah, definitely. And my list is kind of similar like that too. I don't feel like Guard has the potential to push big wins, as we would call it, right? Okay, so if we're gonna, so I've started off with Iron Hands and Eldari. I think the one so this is a great example because no one in our team plays this. Chaos Demons, extremely popular. And very strong, actually. I think in America, Chaos Demons are very dominant. And actually in the UK, a guy called Jack Tite, good friend of mine, has I think won 23 games in a row across 2 GTs, including practice, with his Chaos Demons. Disciples of Be'lakor with 2 knights with the Avenger Gatling Cannon and the Melter Spear, which is crazy, right? Like, so, I mean, Demons, I think, definitely up there. And then we've got Guard is definitely up there. World Eaters is, interesting. Orcs is really interesting, as we'll get onto later. Necrons is really interesting, perhaps not as a good singles list, but as something that doesn't really lose and has one matchup that might be very good. Did I miss anything? Those are kind of the core ones, right?
Yeah, the thing is, there's a bit of a like I know what you're saying when you immediately say Eldar and Iron Hands, because sure, statistically, you're probably going to say Chaos Demons and Iron Hands because they're just like all the stats point towards those being the strongest. But we know from kind of playing and practicing that Eldar are up there as well with those.
Yeah.
And then it starts to become a little bit of a mishmash of things.
Yeah, exactly right. Like the first two seem kind of okay, we'll take these two, and then the rest is very much up for grabs, so to speak, right?
Yeah, so you can make an argument for loads of different things. You can make an argument for Tau Empire being good.
Genestealer Cult?
Yeah, GSC being excellent. You mentioned Necrons, World Eaters, Chaos Knights.
Chaos Knights, yeah.
Other Marine factions, Space Wolves, excellent as well. So, and I mean, even people have been testing Emperor's Children and things, getting a bit of success there.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of armies which work really, really well, and there's only a few factions which actually don't have a functionally good kind of army that you can play competitively.
Yep.
So I don't think you even need to go down to top 8. You can just do like, here's maybe the best few factions, and then everything else kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah. And perhaps a good way of thinking about this is that if you were to go from 5s to 8s, you wouldn't really struggle to fill those last 3 slots out, right? Relative to your other 6 factions in there.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
In fact, you're probably still playing. You're probably playing all of the above that we mentioned, and then some of those lists might be just a bit more skewed, in general, right? Like you might play 8 Lehman Russes, or you might play, a bunch of Horde list, for example, and try and snipe a matchup if you can.
And I think in these situations where the meta's balanced like this, players kind of who have experience on their individual faction, mastery of their faction, and their individual player skill relative to other people becomes kind of very important.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can see that with our choices of factions in this tournament, where we've all picked factions that we have a lot of practice and experience with.
Definitely. Should we segue then? Here's what we're taking. So we played last time with our half teammate. 0.5er, although he's got the apparel coming, so he's got the team shirts coming. So I think he's an official member at this point. Boris Michev, the owner of Bad Moon Cafe, and a dear friend of ours, playing World Eaters. So he's been playing that for quite a while. And
best overall at Warhammer Fest as well.
Yeah, best overall.
Won a golden ticket.
Yeah, and his army is painted incredibly as well. So he managed to make the top 16. Already just won the best overall, and then decided, I'm going to go home and spend time with my family after that.
Boom.
That's how you do it. Playing World Eater, so we've got one melee army there, and then we've got Brian Sipe, the orc himself. If you're a listener that perhaps hasn't, met Brian, or if you don't really know Brian's origins, you may not know that he is probably the best orc player in the world. The guy had crushed Alpine Cup recently. I think he was the second most scoring player or something like that at Alpine. But with I want to say multiple 20s, but I'm going to preface that. But they won the entire Alpine Cup with the stat check team there. So he's playing Orcs, which is another melee list for us.
Yeah, I mean, Brian says himself that Teams is the best format that he plays in. And Brian has developed so much as a player over the last 6 months. You can't even recognize how good he is at the game now. So I think, I would almost put him as our most deadly player in this team.
For sure. I think he is personally. I 100% agree. Obviously, he got third at Warhammer Fest the last tournament we played as well, with a very good chance of getting and win it as well. So, and then we've got me. I'm playing Astra Militarum. So I'm playing something very similar to my Warhammer list, but I've just teched it a little bit. So it's got a bit more shooting elements to it. If you are a kind of an avid guard follower, I've removed one of the power sword melee relics. Like, I know I had to do it.
That's wild.
And then I've removed 10 Cadia shock troops and 1 armored sentinel, and I've just put in 10 Caskins and the Barbican's key. So in teams when you can dodge matchups that have no indirect, for example, just having that 100-point unit of Kaskin, Barbican key, you can start on the battlefield. You can turn it up, boom, nuke something. Is really good for teams if you can dodge something, and it just adds another shooting element to the UKTC format, which is probably quite good.
Absolutely.
And then we've got Jokul Johansson, who is playing Iron Hands. I think we've all seen the various one flavor of Iron Hand list that everyone seems to run. So.
It just all seems to fluctuate between, do you run 15 Desolation Marines or 10? Do you run
Yeah.
2 Landspeeder Storms or 1? So Jokit's gone for 15 Desolation Marines
Yep.
here and only a single Landspeeder Storm.
Yep.
And yeah, obviously very strong, and he's played a lot with Iron Hands.
Yes,
so
I think that's another one of our people that we think is the pusher as well, right?
solid pick. Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
you've got Eldari. Is there any
I've
big
got
changes for your list?
Eldari. I mean, I've just dropped all of the D cannons. I have single Phoenix Lord here. I have double Death Jester. So I played a game with Liam VSL. Took some inspiration from him on things.
Yep.
I've skewed it a little bit for teams. I don't have any anti tank. It's just loads of shots, anti infantry shots. So I'm just gonna play the mission and try and blow people out if I can.
Yeah, double Night Spinner as well, right?
Double Night Spin.
Got
it. Got it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a very difficult list to tackle, that one, I feel. And on some missions, your list is just very hard to interact with secondary-wise as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, it pounces on people's mistakes so well that I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for it. Give me something, but we'll see.
So I think maybe what is something interesting, perhaps, is the thought process we went through to decide on the final 5. We had Boris playing World Eaters, who was locked in for all intents and purposes. So we were kind of working with 4 people. We knew that we wanted to play Iron Hands. And then Vic, and between Vic and Brian, you both played Eldari. So we were kind of locked into playing that as well. And then I was sort of open to playing anything because as testing went on, the guard lists don't really perform as well on UKTC. I have to say, it doesn't feel anywhere near as strong. And being a teams list, it's not as good because a lot of my games at Warhammer Fest, I was simply winning on a point-for-point basis. So that was the epitome of a singles strategy, I would say. So hopefully I've got some more elements in there to push bigger wins, but I think I'm just a very all-comer list. I can, draw very minor loss against anything in the field. And then we've got Brian on Orcs. So we were kind of worried about having 2 melee-orientated factions. But the tournament structure, like we alluded to earlier, is such that the Scouring is the last mission. And the Scouring is very, very good for World Eaters and Orcs. So there's a chance that, if we make it to the final round, those armies could perform very, very well. But before that, we were looking at playing Chaos Knights, actually. Now, we are, I guess, one of the top teams here. And Chaos Knights was a serious contender. It was the one faction that we were looking at swapping, and we were looking at Yokul playing Chaos Knights and then moving Brian off Orcs and then onto Iron Hands so that we had potentially a pin against Eldari maybe, or we had something great against GSC or something, just a bit more anti-infantry and could perhaps be really good on the Scouring as well. So a lot of decisions, and I think that just goes to show, like we said earlier, just how competitive the balance is right now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting one because Brian, like having a player who's really good on a faction like Orcs, just feels like, oh, you've got to go for it. It's like if we had someone who was really good on Gene Stealer cults, you just find a way to get that in there because that's an army that people can really struggle to deal with if they don't understand it or have practiced against it much, and you won't have
for sure
against those. So,
and I think maybe it's
powerful.
worth noting that if you don't play teams regularly, a lot of teams operate on what's called a matrix. So you will input your faction and its expected performance against other factions, and now the matrix is very important because it's how you structure your pairings process. And if you perhaps insert a value of this is a slight win for me because of my experience playing all these other Gene Stealer cult players or Orc players or Guard players, and then all of a sudden you come against someone who's on a list that is a little bit adjacent to what you've played against and only plays that, all of a sudden your matrix might not reflect reality there, and that can get you in a tough pickle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of nuances to actually doing teams, and I'm expecting maybe half of our listeners do have played some teams, have some experience, and half don't potentially. And with 5s, it's quite a simple format to kind of do it.
Yeah.
And just to briefly touch on it, both teams put down one of their 5 factions as their attacker, and then you'll then put down 2 defenders.
Other way around. Yeah, you put down a defender, and then you put down 2 attackers for your opponent's defender. Yeah.
Exactly, and then your opponent picks one, and you pick one of the attackers, and then that makes your first 2 pairings. You rinse and repeat for the next 2 pairings, and then the last one will be the remaining 2 factions.
Yeah.
So that's the way it works, and that creates a lot of kind of little nuance in who you put as your attackers, who you put as your defenders, and some lists will kind of trend towards being better for one or the other.
Yeah.
And your matrix will help guide you on that. So I think it's really interesting to see the pairings process. And I mean, you have some experience in it. Jokic is obviously Team Iceland captain, so he has a lot of experience with it.
I will quote: Haidar is actually technically the Team Iceland captain.
Oh, is he? Okay,
Jokul does a lot of work. He is the powerhouse in our teams on our team's back end. That's for sure.
For sure. And then obviously Brian has a lot of experience with Scotland as well. So we've got some knowledge.
Yeah. So if Boris made Team Bulgaria this year, then we would have had 5 WTC players on our team, all from different nations as well.
Yeah, really it's awesome. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. So that's the team format. I would really encourage you, if you're a listener and you haven't played teams before, just go out and try it. It's such good fun. There are so many Discords where you can look for a team. There's always lots of people making mercenary teams or just pickup groups. And if you just want to go and play Warhammer 40k, where every single game will mean something, then it's a really good time, because even if you lose, if you scrape 1 or 2 points, it can often be the difference maker. And there's nothing that much better than getting a loss higher than you should to clinch the round. I think that's the epitome of teams, right?
Definitely, and you play very differently. Like this game I had against Liam, we were both playing Eldar, so we were doing a mirror. The person who goes first in that has a big advantage. And Liam went first into it, and I just played ultra defensively just to make sure I don't lose really badly. And the game ended up, kind of 13-7, so very close, kind of just in small win territory. And I would never have played like that in singles. In singles, I would have tried to find a way and like sacrificed myself if I had to try and somehow get a win with a bit of luck.
Look for those 1, 2, 3, 4%.
Exactly. Yep. Sometimes you just got to take a chance, but you don't do that as much in teams, I think.
Different skill set, that's for sure. So should we go through some of the top teams other than ourselves that we think are really kind of contenders here?
Definitely. Should we just jump straight in with Team England?
Go straight for it. Team England. They are the winners previously.
Every time. I think they've won every single one of these.
Someone's got to take these guys down. And they, of course, have a star-studded lineup of all Team England players. We've got Chris Kinnear on Necrons, Josh Roberts on Space Wolves, Manny Chima on Thousand Suns, Matt Robertson on Aldari, Mike Porter on Genestealer Cult. So I guess the standout one there is Matty Chima playing Thousand Suns. It's a bit of a curveball, isn't it?
It's a bit of a mix-up, isn't it? And it's quite interesting, like, to think about the potential reasons why. And one thing that I find interesting is, in this particular tournament, if you were going to go in, like for us, we were thinking, who is our biggest competitor? And we would probably immediately say Team England. And then when you're thinking about your list, you would kind of think, what are they going to bring? What are they going to bring? Is what I'm taking going to be appropriate for it?
Yeah, of course.
And I don't know for sure because I haven't talked with the guys about it, even though I'm on Team England as well. But I have a feeling they would have thought potentially about what kind of factions we're bringing.
Yeah.
And, I don't think Thousand Suns is such a bad pick into the lineup of factions that we would take if they were going to guess our factions. And I think we have played the factions that people would guess that we would be playing, pretty much.
Interesting, yeah.
And I think Thousand Suns are not bad for that. Let me see here. Yeah, I think it's got an okay match, ish. It's a tricky one because the thing with Thousand Suns is the scoring isn't as dominant as it was before.
Yeah, and that was the primary strength of the list, of course.
So it's going to be interesting to see how far Manny's individual player skill takes a tricky army like Thousand Suns and how maybe he can manipulate what is probably pairings which he should, either lose a little bit by or draw against, and if he's able to manipulate it into wins. And it only takes like one player in a team, if it's a really close game, to do that, to completely switch the score around. Normally in kind of larger team events, you have a bracket of scoring which would result in a draw for the entire team. But in this particular event, even winning overall, if you add all of your team scores together, if you win by 1 point, you win the round. sometimes I think these little curveball lists like Brian's Orcs or Manny's Thousand Suns, which are, you would probably, I would probably expect to beat every Orc player that I come up against in tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
But, Brian might just throw a curveball and completely change that from what we've predicted and give a different score. And I have a feeling Manny probably sits in that category with this curveball choice.
Interesting. 20 Terminators, by the way, guys, and 2 units of 3 Flamers. Fate Skimmer off the top of my head, 10 Blues, I think, as well. So,
yeah.
Not the Thousand Suns list that gives you a lot of agency, I would say.
It's not very scary, actually. But he's got all of the tools in there.
Then we've got Mike Porter playing Gene Stealer Call, and this is reflective of the lists that have moved to the Goliath trucks, I think, as well. So I think, did Mike play something similar at Warhammer Fest?
Yeah, I think Chewie did as well. So
cool. And then
very Team England-y list.
Chris Kinnear, I think, has been playing Necrons for Team England for quite a while, right? It's been one of his main factions. He's playing
boss on the Necrons.
The Nihilak Necrons with 2 big destroyer bricks off the top of my head. And he's got the tomb. Is it the Tomb Blade plane?
It's called a Night Scythe, yes.
Yeah. And then the unit of melee units that can drop within range of it.
Yep, exactly, as close as they want. And interestingly, he's got no Hexmark destroyers. He's just got a lot of MSU on this. This is a very powerful teams list, to be honest, because adding the Night Scythe in gives you, and also the Locust destroyers being able to teleport, gives you a lot of ability to blow out opponents all of a sudden.
Yep.
On top of just never losing games by a lot, usually.
Yeah. Very good all-round list.
Very good list. Yeah.
Definitely one to consider if you're playing teams, which is great because they don't have a very good singles performance, of course, as of recent. But in teams, very competitive faction, I think.
And then we've got Josh Roberts on Space Wolves. He ran this at Warhammer Fest, and he beat me with with his Space Wolves. And Josh is insanely good at the game. He's very methodical and careful. And the thing is, he's even better in teams than he is in singles, I think. I played him once in teams as well, and he was paired into me with an awful matchup. My Tau against just his Drukhari. And he should have lost that game so badly, but he kept it so tight and only made it a small loss. So I think he's playing a list which gives him a lot of ability just to express his player skill and keep kind of hit scores that he wants to.
Of course, yeah. And Space Wolves obviously being a very, very competitive faction at the moment as well, right?
Yeah, and then we finally got Robbo on Eldari. He ran this at Warhammer Fest as well. He's also running Swift Strike's Masterful Shots. And there's a lot of similarities in our list, a few little differences. He's got no Night Spinners, and he's got 2 Phoenix Lords. So he's got a few pieces which he's chosen which help him in games against, say, Marines and things like that, maybe at the expense of the mirror a little bit. But Robbo's a brilliant player as well, and I think he'll have fun and do well with this Eldar list.
For sure. Then I would like to touch on a couple of other teams. We've got Tryhard Wargaming.
Which one we got?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Yeah,
there's 3 of them.
This is great. I think what I would say on this one is that from a purely outsider's perspective, and I know the guys might listen to this, so they know I do really mean this in good faith, is and there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing this, is that if I were to create the best lineup from Tryhard Wargaming, I think they've spread some of their best players across the 3 teams. And like I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Teams at the end of the day comes down to, players that you want to play with, different competing interests, factions you want to play. There's, with 15 people, it's so hard to get, the gel just right, unless people are really willing to make big sacrifices to create the best team. But they have a ton of players, and they all play on Discord as well. They all play on TTS a lot.
This is crazy. This is like a TTS community.
Yeah.
They have 3 teams, Dave.
I know,
it's just in the UK. What the hell?
This is like the most grassroots team I've ever seen. They're awesome, by the way. Like we chat there all the time. But yeah, their first team has got Chris Patterson on. I'm going to say Iron Hands. He's got Adeptus Astartes. Danny Porter from Team Poland. Leagues of Votan. Kylo Turley, who's been playing Imperial Knights a long time. Piri Alexandre on Astra Militarum. And which is just a general born soldiers list, which I think is a great choice. And then Tom Brown playing Orcs as well. So an interesting lineup there. I think there's, potentially the weaknesses there is having 2 armies with 2 big footprints of Leagues of Votan and Imperial Knights being maybe vulnerable to shooting. But maybe we can go through some when we go through the logic. We'll like kind of explain what our initial thoughts are, so to speak. But
For sure.
Try hard to try harder. It's the second team. We've got Alexander Mason playing Chaos Demons, James March playing Gene Stealer Cult, Matt Stevenson's playing Yanari, Sam Nash playing Space Wolves, and Tristram Allen playing World Eaters. And then the best team name of the entire tournament, I think, Try Hard with a Vengeance. Fantastic. Dylan Usher playing Leagues of Votan. He's been playing the LOV for a while, actually. Josie Cartwright playing Necrons, who top 16 at the...
She's a beast, actually. She just, like,
she is a beast.
Everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to see Josie playing a much better faction, because I think she's got real talent to
she
really
only loses by like a point when she does lose. So
there's oftentimes people that make it
track.
deep in tournaments, but make very still glaring mistakes. But you look at some people play and they play the game right throughout the time, and you could see that they got a little bit more potential beyond them. So I personally think Josie is up there, and I hope she makes a big splash for the 10th edition. Kenneth Ward, who's a UKTC regular as well, playing Sisters, which is a really interesting choice if you can dodge.
I was really thinking about this, to be honest, and I think Sisters sit in this meta for a team event so well. And I was just thinking, looking at like the Team England lists, if I had ran Sisters instead of Eldari, I think my matrix would have been better almost entirely across the board, except for against Space Wolves.
Really? Wow.
And even against Space Wolves potentially. I think the Eldar list is worse in every matchup than Sisters would have been.
Wow. Sisters have just dropped off the cliff, haven't they?
I know, really? They have.
Yeah. We've got, I don't know if this is his actual name, but Rez Platon playing Iron Warriors. If you are playing Iron Warriors, you are a beast.
Is it actually Iron Warriors?
It says Iron Warriors there.
Yeah, I'm looking into it. It's got obliterators. He is a
beast.
Baby.
And then Thomas Becker is playing what I'm assuming is going to be Iron Hands there as well. So
Let's see.
I really like these. All the people from there are a really great bunch of people. Then we've got,
and I think they're all going to do well, aren't they?
For sure, yeah. Then we've got 6++, good friends of ours as well.
Oh, yes.
Chris Tull playing Yanari, Ed Fawcett playing Adeptus Custodes, Jack Chapman playing Tau, Lee Churchward playing Astra Militarum, good on him, and then Paul James playing Dark Angels. And I think the Dark Angels list is close to 40-ish Terminators. So that's an interesting... Because
he's still going with it,
yeah.
Paul. He's not giving up on... No, it's not 40-ish Terminators, Dave.
No, but there's Blade Guard veterans, which I'm counting as Terminators in there.
Yeah, he's actually got a mixture. He's got attack bikes. He's got Desolation Marines.
Oh, take it back.
He's got 2 Talon Masters. That's a nice mixed list from Paul.
And Lee is playing Born Soldiers as well, which is just a really well-rounded Born Soldiers list. He's got 3 heavy mortars, which is 3 mortars, which is an interesting choice because, you know, in teams sometimes mortars can be absolutely horrifically good. So in Born Soldiers, no finial these days to minus the to reduce the hit penalty though. So it's an interesting choice. I'm keen to see how those ones go. I suspect they could be quite good in teams actually.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then we've got. Oh, sorry, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep blasting through. We've got a team called Army Reactor, who have some definite notables on here. We've got Adam Lane playing Iron Hands. Insert generic Iron Hand list here. John Swallow playing. I think it's about 150
Necron Warriors. Oh my goodness, give me a headache.
and then we've got Mike Duff, a man after my heart, playing Armored Superiority, Swift as the Wind, Imperial Guard. No Leontis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 Lehman Russes and a Rogue Dawn and 3 Chimeras. So let's go, baby. I was chatting to Mike about this yesterday.
This is a lot.
That's a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of tanks.
And we've got Nathan Roberts playing Chaos Knights, which I'm assuming is very similar to his Warhammer Fest list that he played previously. And then we've got Peter Duff, who I'm assuming is Mike's brother, playing World Eaters as well. So I think that's it's quite a good team, that actually.
This is a very good team, actually, for this event, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think
have we got a War Masters team here?
Oh, where is that? So we've got
War Masters Alpha.
War Masters Alpha. You can go through this one.
Oh, okay, cool. So we've got Raphael Harbinson, who I think normally plays White Scars, but he is how have they managed to do this? They've moved him over to Iron Hands. So a strong start with Iron Hands. Andrew Bourbon on his Grey Knights, who's very experienced with it. We've got Jamie Balcom with his Adeptus Custodes again, experienced with it. We've got Jack. You talked about Jack earlier in the podcast, who's running his Disciples of Be'lakor, which I think is going to be really good at this event. Actually, he's got so much practice with it. And then we've got the mighty Nassim Fushain, who is here with his Tau, and I'm so glad he's bringing his Tau back in action. He's actually skewed his list a little bit interestingly here. He's not running any Riptides. And he's running a second unit of Crisis Battlesuit. So he's got the normal unit that he normally runs, Cyclic Ion, Blaster, Burst Cannon, Plasma Rifle. But he's also brought a unit with 2 Airburst Fragmentation launches each.
Yeah, spicy. Anti-infantry.
And that's a unit of 5. That's a 500-point unit of Airburst.
That is going to be fun to play, though, let's be honest.
That's a super interesting list. Spicy. He's got all the buffs for it as well between Long Strike, Shadow Sun. I'm going to keep an eye on his scores because that's going to be awesome.
For sure. And another interesting team that I think cropped up here, a team called Fire and Dice, who have everyone being a very regular player. We've got Byron Saidu, absolutely lovely gent, playing Chaos Demons with, I think he's got the 3 big boys. I think he's got Be'lakor, Bloodthirster, and Kairos. So that's a sweet list. And then we've got, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce Dennis's last name because I'm from New Zealand, but Dennis playing Necrons, and he's played Necrons for a long time, man. He actually won his first major on the Coventry 2-dayer last year, I want to say.
Do you think that is his actual surname or is it a Necron name? Because that is so Necron-y. That's incredible.
He's also got a skull and flex emoji in his name, so that's fair.
Got it.
And then we've got Ewan Bedford Cooper, who also does a Warhammer written blog, if that's the kind of thing you're into.
It's a very good blog as well, actually.
Takes a lot of pictures. I've had the pleasure of playing him a couple of times, playing Black Legion, so he's going the Abaddon's actual Legion. Nice. And we've got Matt Reed playing Iron Hands, and we've got Sid Saidu playing Imperial Knights, who's played that for a long time as well. So quite a good team, this one, actually, as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Solid all around.
And then I think perhaps the last one we'll tick off here today is Mind Goblins, only because they somehow got second every single tournament.
This is a cool team.
This is a really cool team, Dom Madlow's new team. And we've got Dom Madlow playing Chaos Demons. We've got Kyle Grundy on Tau. And I believe Dom's list is just undivided. Not Disciples of Be'lakor. Kyle Grundy on Tau. We've got
2 Lewises. Wow. This is so Lewis Fitzsimmons is someone I've known since I started playing 40k.
Awesome.
So I'm really hyped to see him.
So yeah, like you said, we got Lewis Fitzsimmons on Grey Knights, and then we've got Louise Bellington on Dark Angels. I'm going to inspect this list and get it right this time. And then we've got Tom Green playing Goths. I think Goths is a great choice for this tournament, personally.
Nice. Solid thing. Do Vanguard Tactics not have a team if Kyle's here? Oh, actually, no. Kyle's doing his Tau thing, isn't he? I would recommend that if anyone's interested in Tau. The Pure Tide program is Kyle Grundy's Tau coaching service. And it's actually a very, very good Discord. I'm on there. Okay. And I listened to one of his interviews with Nassim because they both brought Tau to Warhammer Fest. Yeah. And the way they went through each game, which is actually extremely valuable if you're interested in Tau. So anyone who's interested in that, give Pure Tide program a look.
If you like fishing, go fish. I love fishing, actually. Vanguard Tactics do have a team. Ben Jones playing Asturani, which he's always played. I think Asturani might be good here, actually, because if you can dodge the indirect...
Yeah, not Yanari.
Oh, he's not
a big
playing
Yanari guy. He's not playing Yanari.
Oh, I'm disappointed, actually.
He's gone for Triple Phoenix Lord here. So he's got Baharoth, Irilith, and Karandras.
Triple Warwalker. Nice.
Boom.
And then we've got George playing Chaos Demons, Jack Downing playing Dark Angels, Jake Harding playing Knights, and then Mike Costello playing Tyranids. Oh, let me look at this list because I was next to Mike Costello playing the same list, actually, by the looks of it. Yep, playing the same Tyranid list next to me in the game versus Kyle Grundy, actually. He's got the Screamer Killers in there,
No Stephen Box. That's a shame.
That is a shame, yeah. We've got, I would like to say, Mike Costello, I think, is probably the most, if you look at it from a statistical perspective, he's probably one of the most dedicated Tyranid players out there. Because he has taken Tyranids for a long time, man. And I know he
Yeah,
used to play Deathwatch, and I think Deathwatch are
he
in a good
did.
spot right now, actually. So, but he's sticking with it,
I'm surprised he hasn't switched back to the Death Watch, to be honest.
Yeah. What's going on, Mike? No,
Oh,
but his army does look really sweet as well. It's got the green carapace on him. I like that.
nice.
Nice. Yeah, so that's the tournament, guys. We're from our personal perspective, obviously we're going to try and win it. We've got people who are kind of deep experts on every single one of our factions, I think. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We've got our Team Ignite shirts arriving.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
They look so good.
so much effort has gone into these. So
yeah.
I know for me personally, it means a lot. We kind of created the Team Ignite a few months ago, right? And it feels like it's really culminating. We had a great Warhammer Fest, but this will be the first team tournament for us, so we're ready to lay down the hammer.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, overall, this season has got off to a really great start for the team, and everyone's doing really, really well. I think in the UKTC rankings for this season, I think the top 10 is filled with our team, which is great. So hopefully it continues.
Hopefully it continues. There we go. We'll continue on episode 24. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the Fireside this episode. If you are listening to this point, we really appreciate your support. There was a very humbling Reddit post made recently asking about the best podcasts, and somehow we made it to the number one upvoted podcast. Which,
lots of people mentioned this, which is really, really nice.
Which is just baffling because we don't put that much effort into this. If we're being critical of ourselves, but we're going to be trying to up the ante a little bit soon. So thank you. We really appreciate you guys.
Absolutely, guys, and so see you at the next episode. This has been a great chat about all the different teams attending Birmingham Super Major. Did you have something you want to say?
No, I'm good. I'm just pumped.
Oh, good, man. Let's do it. So I think Birmingham Super Major is going to be awesome. Looking forward to seeing all of you guys there. If you have any questions or want to ask us anything, just pop a comment in.
Yeah.
And see you next time by the Fireside.
Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside podcast. Vic and I hope you've enjoyed listening, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide after the show.